Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the next in our series of how-to webinars from the Northern Affinity. I am delighted to say that here this morning we are here with Laura from Chroma, and she's going to be talking to us all about how to leverage your content for regular messages to generate leads. Which I guess for most people in the business, that is the whole point. Just to let everyone know, this session, obviously for those who are watching it live. Please do contribute with questions or comments as we go through. I know from the stuff that Laura's going to be doing today, it's going to kind of broken down into segments. So what we'll do is if you've got questions that you want to ask, please do put it in the Q&A box, and I will then take those to Laura at the intervals, and we'll go through. And obviously anything that pops into your head as we go through, we can try to cover. And at the end, I'm sure there'll be one or two things as well. For obviously there'll be also people watching it recorded. Hopefully you find it really useful. Whilst you're not being able to ask questions directly live, I'm sure if you do put it in, whether you contact me or Laura directly, if there's any questions, I'm sure we'll be able to answer it somewhere. So I will finish here now, and I will let Laura take over and actually do the thing you've tuned in for. So if you want to introduce yourself, Laura, and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just share my screen. So I'm Laura Norman. I run Chroma Marketing. I'm a marketing consultant. So my job is to help people strategize with their marketing, figure out the best tools for them to use. And based on a lot of conversations I've been having with people recently, I thought this would be a really good webinar to start with. It's my first proper webinar, which is quite exciting. But this is all about how to leverage your content. So it's about how you can take your content from being kind of maintained, so having regular messages going out there, managing your things like social media, to kind of transforming that to generate leads. So I'll go into this a little bit in more detail later, but the whole point of marketing is to generate leads that you can then convert into sales. So what I'm going to try and do today is break down some key kind of touch points, key things for you to flag and brainstorm and get creative with, to make your marketing a little bit more fun, a little bit more creative, and obviously more effective, instead of the kind of mundane, well, I need to get a social media post out, or I need to make sure I've got a newsletter going out this month that isn't generating those leads. So the first port of call, what my objectives are for today. What I want to try and do is break down 5 steps that if we take these 5 steps, you should find that your content is much more valuable. It is much more about generating leads and not just about broadcasting. It's much more about getting engagement. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to make sure your content is centered around your audience. They're the reason you set up in business. So your content and your marketing needs to be focused on them, not you. So we're going to break that down. Then we're going to move into content itself and what that looks like and how you can create a really clear and effective content plan. What we're going to use that to do is then understand the difference between managing your content and generating leads, because that's what we're all here for at the end of the day. And what we're then going to do is look at how we can make that more creative, and also start to think about how you can have brand advocates, so they're doing a lot of the work for you, which win-win. So first port of call, what is content? There are a million different links online and a million different blogs and things that, to be honest, pretty much all say the same thing. The root of content marketing is a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract your audience, ultimately to drive profitable action. So breaking that down a little bit, it's about putting materials out there that your audience are going to engage with to the point that they're going to pay you, basically. They're going to sign up, they're going to book now, they're going to do whatever it is you're trying to get people to do, because you've nurtured them, you've added value to their experience in a relevant and consistent way. So that is kind of a breakdown of what content marketing is, what that looks like. So like I said before, the first step for this is really to think about what your message is. So your content won't generate you leads if it doesn't resonate with your audience. The reason you set out in business is because you found a gap, you thought you could do something better than somebody else most of the time. They're the two reasons. The core of that is that you're making a difference for somebody. That could be Joe Bloggs down the road. It could be your business partner. It could be a business that you share an office with. It could be anybody, but you've set out in business to fix a problem or to fulfill somebody's need and want. If your marketing doesn't speak to and your content doesn't speak to their need and want, you're missing a trick, because it's not going to get them hooked. It's kind of like an addiction. What you want to do is have your, not that I'm promoting addiction, but have your marketing hook people in and keep them there. And you do that by resonating with people on an ongoing and consistent, like I said before, basis. So how do you do that? A really good framework for breaking down your message. If anybody wants access to this, give me a nudge and we can have a chat. There's a book called Building a Story Brand, written by Donald Miller. If anybody's not read it, read it, because it really simply breaks down how to write your content and put your message out there in a way that your customers will engage with. So what it does is it positions the message differently to what you will see on a lot of social media channels, on a lot of emails. What this does is it puts the character, which is your customer, at the center of the marketing. You are then the guide for that character. So your character, your audience have a problem. You are the guide. So giving an example of this in movie terms, and this is actually an example that comes from a book, Star Wars. You've got Luke Skywalker. He's the character. He's your audience. He has a problem. He doesn't know who his dad is. Then what you've got is Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's you. He's the guide. Obi-Wan Kenobi is trying to help Luke Skywalker through his problems to achieve the success story, the result, the winner. So what you want to do here is everything in your marketing needs to surround your character and their problem. You are then going to communicate how you offer your service in a way that shows people that you are guiding them through, you're supporting them, you've got the right reputation to achieve the result that they set out trying to achieve. So whether that's more sales, whether that is that they need more people in their database, whether that's to sell tickets for an event, it doesn't really matter. But what this framework does is it positions it so you're constantly thinking about your audience when trying to divulge your message. So how do you do that? So what this kind of framework does is it breaks it down simply into 3 columns. And if you write out these 3 columns, you've got a really clear flow chart of what story you need to tell. Your character and audience, the first thing you need to ask is, what do they want? What do they actually want out of your service? Or what do they want in life? What's their biggest problem? So it could be that they want to form a community with musicians. Say it's a music management company, and what they want is to have a bigger community of musicians and musical venues. So that's their want. That is very simply what they want. And if you can write that in a statement, you know it's very succinct and very kind of efficient. Breaking that down, what you then need to think about is who's Darth Vader of their story. So the villain is the thing that they are constantly battling against that means that they can't get what they want. It's that hurdle. So what's their problem? So it might be, for the music management company example, that their villain is social media. Their villain is that everybody's spending time on social media, but they're not getting together, so they're not actually talking about problems that they're facing that the music management company can solve. Okay, now you know who that villain is, you can play to and talk about the problems that they're facing more effectively, because what you can then break down, which is the next bullet point, is what their external and internal problems are. External problems are things that they will talk about to somebody else. They're things that you can see from the outside. So it might be that they're not making enough profit. It might be that their profit margins are too low. It might be that they aren't selling enough tickets, so they're not getting enough people at their events. They have a bad reputation, or maybe they've got low reviews online. What is that kind of customer facing problem? That's the kind of, I suppose, cherry on top of the cake. But actually what you've got within that are loads of internal problems. And I like to think of these as frustrations. It's all about how they're actually feeling And that is the sweet spot that you need to market to. So it might be that they are literally just feeling frustrated. They feel a lack of confidence. They are really struggling with their mental health. Those kind of things are what you need to talk about, because if you can acknowledge that you're not really, have you ever been in a situation where you feel X, you're not seeing enough of Y, and you're constantly worried about the villain? If you can introduce your marketing message, especially sales messages, if you can introduce that message by acknowledging the problem that your character and audience are facing, they're going to sit there and say, well, that is me. That is 100% my problem right now. So I'm going to listen, I'm going to read further and see what you've got to say about this. So you're automatically hooking them in with that sweet spot. Another thing you can try and do is do the kind of should versus shouldn't, the philosophical kind of problem area, which is you should feel like this. You should not be feeling like this. If you can say to people, you shouldn't be doing this on a day-to-day basis. You shouldn't be drowning in receipts. You shouldn't be worrying about whether you can get your 30-minute walk in every day. You know, if you can talk about that and then say, but actually you should be feeling like this, and this is how I can help you, that's when you're then positioning yourself as the guide rather than talking about your services and not adding value to people. So the first column is talking about your audience and their problems, their kind of wants and needs. What you then want to do is talk about how you guide yourself. So you want to introduce yourself as the person that they can get help from. They can get what they need from you. So the first thing you want to do is kind of play on the should versus shouldn't. So you want to have empathy. So you want to say to people that you understand how they are feeling. It's a bit like a therapy session. You need to kind of say, all right, I get it. I understand. This is why I'm here. Then you want to talk about why you are the authority that they can trust. And this is where you want to build up your reputation. So constantly hammering home things like getting Google reviews, making sure that you get testimonials and case studies. But also, for example, if you've done a webinar for the Northern Affinity, tell people that you are a partner of an organisation that they trust. If you've been featured in the Yorkshire Post or in Vogue, shout about it and tell people, right, you can trust me because I know my stuff. I am the person because I've been featured here. I've got this many reviews. I've got really solid testimonials. Automatically, what you're doing is saying, I understand your problem. This is why you can trust me. And you're kind of nurturing that lead. Then you lay out how you're going to help them. So then you want to say, right, these are the steps you need to take. The first one will be your first touch point. So once you've got a potential lead, what is the first thing you direct them to? For myself, it's I'll do a review for you. For other people, it might be a discovery call. But what you want to do is lay out as easily and concise as possible the maybe 4 steps, 5 steps that they will be taking to fixing their problem or fulfilling their need. So literally, if you haven't got it already, draw it out as a flow diagram and show people so it's really approachable and it isn't complicated. The one thing you don't want to do is overcomplicate that process, because that's when you lose people and you'll see them leaving your website. So just to rehash so far, when you're positioning yourself as a guide, you want to tell them how you understand and how you get how they're feeling. Then you want to tell them, right, okay, this is my level of authority in this field. This is why you can trust me. Then you lay out the process. And then the final bit of this section is kind of that guarantee. So when you work with somebody, and this might not fit everybody, but you might have like customer satisfaction pillars. You might have a money back guarantee is a really obvious one. Basically, you are saying to people, if we work together, I guarantee you, or you sign up to work within our values. Values are a really good kind of communication for this agreement section. If you've got 4 brand values and they resonate with your audience, tell them that here, because it's, again, it's kind of rounding off that circle of experience for them. So you've acknowledged their problem, you've told them why you're the right person for them, you've gone through your process, and you've also made them feel comfortable because you've told them the guarantee and you've told them the kind of, this is what we stand for, this is our agreement with you, we promise X. So what you've got is you've got a customer that knows that you know what their problem is because you've told them. You've then positioned yourself as the perfect person. So what you need to then talk about is what the outcome of that is. So what are your call to actions? How are you actually getting them to do what you need them to do? Are you actually saying this in your content? Because I can guarantee you're probably not. There are two different types of call to action. One is sales, which is where you say, book now, buy this ticket, give me a call. And there's another kind, which is called, in this framework, it's called transitional. I like to think of these as more about getting engagement and generating conversation. Things like leave a comment below, or don't forget to ask a question at the end, or we're going to have a break 15 minutes in, make some notes then of what you want to ask the presenter. So if you're not explicit in telling people what you want them to do, they'll have gone through all these kind of this emotional roller coaster of like, you get me, I want to sign up, and then there's nothing there. So you're going to lose that lead. So what you need to have is just really explicit call to actions and a good mix between the sales call to actions and transitional, because transitional is where you find yourself building that community and a relationship with people. And that's just as important as generating sales, because that plays to your reputation. So once you've got that call to action, what you then want to do is talk about the success factor. So talk about, if you work through this with me, this is how you're going to feel at the end, and reaffirm why you're the best person for them, because you're solving their problem and filling their want. And also sometimes a really good way of overcoming objections is by talking about avoiding failure. So rehash back to the problem they're feeling and talk about that again and say, if you want to avoid feeling like this again, this is the process, and that's where your call to action comes in. So talk about both, depending on the person, depending on the environment. You can talk about both the success and the avoiding failure. And the best way of doing that is really clearly explaining the customer transformation. So tell them, you will go from feeling this to this, or you will go from having this to this. And if you can just kind of follow the framework in that way, it's a really simple, easy way of making sure that each marketing message, whether it's your website homepage, whether it's an email newsletter or a referral partner agreement, whatever it is, you know it's really concise and effective because you've acknowledged every single key consideration that your customer needs you to acknowledge. So that is the kind of first step of changing your content from management to lead generation. It's about positioning your message in a way that it resonates with your audience. So this is what I've just gone through, so I can send screenshots of this. So step 1, what do they want? Step 2, who's the bad guy? Step 3, internal and external frustration. What should they feel, rather what shouldn't they? Then moving on to your guidance and services, show your empathy, show your authority. What's your process, and lay that out really clearly. What's the agreement and guarantee? And then finally, the result. What are your call to actions? Make sure they're really explicit and clear and kind of at the forefront of your marketing. If you've not got a button at the top of your website with your call to action on, get one on. 2, tell the success story. Talk about the wins. 3, remind them of avoiding that failure that you were talking to them about in the first place. And then 4, what is that transformation? So once you've nailed your message, the next thing is to look at actually what different types of content you can use to apply that message. So this is where you want to level up the content you currently have. And this is where I'm going to go on.
Sorry, Laura. Yeah, so I just wanted to say there was a couple of questions obviously from the first bit. If you could just, if that's all right, before you move on to that. So just very quickly, firstly from Michelle, about the name of the book that you mentioned. That what was that?
So it's Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Perfect, thank you. And then just another question. Obviously, you kind of touched about your audience and appealing to your audience. I get there's a question from Sarah here about what tips do you have to ensure that you know who your audience is? Because, and as Sarah's mentioned, that she spent a long time thinking her audience maybe was one thing, and have kind of realised over the last year or so it's maybe something else. Is there any kind of tips or to do on that before you move on? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are a couple of ways that you can tackle this. I like to think of it as there's kind of 3 levels. So your primary audience are the people who will pay anything for your services. They are your regular customers. They are the kind of maybe your bread and butter clients that you have lots of, you have relationships with several of these people. They're people that will watch your webinars. They're people who will click on your emails. They're the people that are the most engaged with your services. They are the people that you want to market at the majority of the time, because they're the people that if you've got more of them, you're going to feel that level of success. And you know that your services are best suited for those people. So it might be, when you're looking at who that is, look at who you've got currently and who your favorite clients are, as much as we might not like to say that, but look at who your favorites are, who you have the best relationships with, and think, right, how do I get more of these? Who is that person? What characteristics make them different from some of my other clients? And it might be how engaged they are with you. It might be how kind of, have they given you reviews already? Are they shouting about and sending you referrals? And think about their characteristics. So what industry are they in? What demographics are there, depending on whether you're business to business or business to consumer? And don't be afraid to niche that down, but also don't be afraid to not niche too much. One thing I would say is don't just say everybody, because that gives you no help at all. You can't funnel your marketing message if you say you market to everybody. Within that, you will have specialisms and a bigger portfolio in some areas. So your primary audience are those who, like I said before, will pay everything. They're your favorite clients and you want more of them. Your secondary audience are people who might not buy everything. They might be a kind of, you get one of them for every three of your other. They might have a slightly bigger niche, or the work you do might just be for one service, and you might find that they pay you the monthly fee or whatever, but actually they don't take part in things like your webinar, or they don't come to your events as much, maybe because of their location or maybe because of their other commitments. But they are people who you need to maintain relationships with. You need to have messages going out there for them, but it's not a priority. The bulk of your messaging needs to be targeted at your primary audience, and you'll probably find that based on what you're saying to your primary audience, your secondary audience are listening to. It might be that once a week or once every couple of weeks you do a post that's more tailored to their industry, for example. The final tier is third level, tertiary, and that is people who you need to maintain relationships with to get things like referrals. So I use this kind of tier as strategic alliances, referral partners and associates, because if they don't know what you're doing, they can't send people your way efficiently. So you need to maintain contact with them. Your marketing message isn't for them, but things like who you engage with and spend time engaging with, that's those people. It might be that you have something where you have a really rigid kind of program for getting together with your referral partners, and that comes into that third level. So I just break it down based on who you spend the most time on, who you enjoy spending the most time on, and who you want more of. The second level is, well, these are great, but it's going to take me more or less to get them. And then who do I need to maintain relationships with? So I hope that answers your question. Is there anything else, Mike?
No, that's perfect. That's it. Thank you, Laura. It's great.
No problem. So second step then, and I'll take questions after this step again for this bit. So the content pyramid, this is kind of an amalgamation of things that I've brought in from different people and different resources. So it's just a really useful way of funneling your content and thinking about the types of content you want to use. So this is the pyramid. It's like the opposite of a funnel, as in the funnel goes down, this pushes up. So what you want to have as a metaphor is a bit of a tectonic plate that pushes up towards the hero piece. So what this is basically is a really easy way for you to acknowledge the quality and value of your content. The base level is the content that you use regularly, but it's like the least valuable. So things like memes, things that are there to generate reactions. So to get those likes, those laughing faces, the claps on LinkedIn, all of that, that's your base level content. Is purely and simply for a reaction. And you'll probably find that a lot of your content is base or serial level at the moment, because it's probably what you're most comfortable in. It's what you see a lot of on things like Lad Bible and what have you. But what you don't want to have is that being it, because you're only then getting reactions. You're not then promoting yourself in order to get leads. So what you then want to bring in are what's called serial content. So it's more purposeful. It's there to actually promote engagement and prompt engagement. So it's, when you think about engagement, don't think about likes, think about comments. Because some social media platforms are starting to dwindle likes out. There's been a lot of conversation on platforms like Facebook and Instagram that eventually the only people that will be able to see who's liked a post is the content creator. Your audience won't be able to see that. So actually what you don't want to do is rely on likes as your only metric. What you do want to do is start really making sure that people are actually engaging with your content, which is comments, saves, that kind of thing. So it's just thinking about how valuable that content is. And are you asking people, this is where your transitional call to actions come in. Are you asking people for feedback, comments, polls, to ask them their opinion? It's where you want to start engaging with your community more and having that conversation. This is also where you should be spending time engaging with other people, because that has just as much benefit from a visibility point of view, and also if you're thinking about how invested your audience are, if you're engaging with them as much as they engage with you, brilliant. I would probably say that 80% of people that's the level that their content ends at. It's really easy. It's maintained and managed content that they can quickly put out. It doesn't take too much creation. What you want to actually start thinking about is how you can make your content more campaign driven. And this is where social and hero content come in. Social and hero content take more time to put together. It's especially for things like social media or video or even blogs, it takes more research, takes more time from an editing point of view. You might have other contributors, which means you don't necessarily do it as often as you do serial and base level, but it is much more high value. So with social content, it's campaign driven. So base your content around some kind of event or something that you can create kind of an event mindset around. And I think if you can plan your content based on campaigns, you probably will find it a lot easier to measure if it's been successful, because of your subconscious mind thinking, well, it's finished now. What was the result? Let's move on to the next one and continue that momentum. So what you'll find is that your campaign kind of social content is more valuable. You get more valuable engagements from it. You get people talking about your brand more, but it's used less often. So as an example, it might be that you are releasing a video series, and your social content is what gets people talking about that video series. The serial content is then how you ask people's opinions. So it might be, who do you want to see in this next video? Or do you think this person is the best sponsor? Or this is a quiz we're doing. Do you want to take part? That kind of thing, where you're driving engagement. Whereas the social content is what actually gets people quoting your tweets or sharing things onto their story on Instagram, or kind of sharing content, but also tagging people in things if it's relevant to them on LinkedIn. So you can see that your social content is much more about scaling up and leveling up the value that people hold within your content. What you then have at the very top is your hero piece. That is the creme de la creme of your content. So it's your best, most valuable and engaged with and shared content. It's your one-off, maybe once a month piece that goes out, and it's all about generating leads. So what you have here is a really good example. We'll use this Northern Affinity stuff. So the events that happen once a month or once a kind of couple of weeks, that is your hero piece. That is the bit that everyone builds up to. At the end of the day, that's the sales point, because you're wanting to get people to sign up to attend or pay to attend. So that is the bit that you spend more money and resources on, because you want to make it a really valuable experience. But it only happens every now and then, because you can't sustain doing it on that level. And also you don't want to detract from the value. So your hero piece is that monthly Northern Affinity event. What you've then got is your social engagements, which are like the webinars that people can tune into. They take a bit more time to put together, not as much time as the hero piece, but you're nurturing those relationships. You're getting people talking with you and talking about the brand. People share things when about the brand when things are coming up. But it's all in tune with having the event at the end of the month. Then what you have lower down is your things to promote engagement. So the post where you tag, or you ask people to tag people that are relevant, or you do a poll asking for people to provide their opinion. And then what you have at the base level is content that's there to gain a reaction. So it's a roundup of the week, or it's a picture of the last event we did and with tagged people in it. And it's all about getting those reactions, getting the post seen a bit further, but it's all leading up to that hero piece, and it's pushing people towards that hero piece. If you can apply the content pyramid framework, and what you can then do is tag in the different types of content you have, or different things that you have going on in each level. And what you then find is when you're mapping your content out on a monthly schedule, you can say, well, actually, I've not even got a hero piece this month. So what can I do that is going to level up maybe a social piece to a hero piece? How can I build some momentum around my next blog going out? It doesn't have to be anything overly complicated. It might be that your blog is your hero piece, and actually the bits below that are maybe you do a Q&A on a Facebook Live, and that's your social. And then your serial, it just basically allows you to look at the content you've got planned, and if you haven't got a content plan, start one, and use this as an initial, right, I know I need to have one hero piece a month, a social piece every couple of weeks, a serial piece every couple of days, or every week, and then a base level every couple of days. Everything else is then there for you to engage with other people, which is just as important as getting your own content out there. And it just gives you a really easy tool to map that out. It might take a little bit of getting your head around first, but if you at least start labeling your posts or your content as, right, which one of these is going to take my most time to put together, put that as your hero piece to start with, just to get yourself in the habit of thinking of it in this way. And obviously, if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to contact me afterwards and I can explain it in a more applied way. So that's step 2. Are there any questions about that at all?
Okay, Laura, I think that's really well explained. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So step 3 is time to strategize. So you know your audience, you know how to layer up your content. Now it's time we start talking leads, because as this point says, if your marketing isn't generating you leads, it's not working. There is absolutely no point, in my opinion, having a website that doesn't generate you leads, spending thousands of pounds on somebody managing your social media that's not getting you leads. You don't have time as a small business owner to waste. And having social media, having content via email newsletters that isn't generating you leads means you're not creating a sales pipeline, which means actually you're not getting a return from the marketing you're doing. So this is I've stolen this graphic from HubSpot because it's a really easy graphic to showcase how lead generation works or should be working. What you'll have is you'll be attracting people, which is where things like social media, having your keywords on your website and Google and things like that, your blog. What you'll have is you're taking people from a stranger, so somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about, to a promoter of your brand. And you go through this process. So you're attracting people through your kind of base level serial content, even up to the kind of higher levels. Then what you want to do is make them a visitor. So what you're trying to do is going from attracting somebody's interest to converting them to a lead, and which is the central point. Doing that, what you'll find is that you'll have things like a webinar that people can sign up to watch, or you'll have a health questionnaire on your website that you want people to fill in to qualify them as a lead. you'll have a review that you conduct or an audit that you do. There's something there which you have maybe a form or a call to action, so those sales call to actions for your first touch point, or a landing page, but there's a way that you can convert them from a stranger and a visitor, so somebody who's landed on your website, to a lead. Basically, this whole kind of half is all about those call to actions. It's all about how you're more explicit in making sure that on your social media posts, you're saying, download this or contact us or whatever. And priming people for the fact that you are trying to convert them into a customer. At the end of the day, that's what marketing's there to do. So what you want to try and do is use your kind of current marketing tools like blogs, social media, email marketing, to attract people, get their attention. Then you want to get them somewhere. So visitors, get them to your website, get them to your event or office or whatever, get them for a coffee, but you're wanting to have time with them, whether that's digitally or in person. And then you start thinking about how you're converting that lead. So you're converting that person into a lead by getting them to do something, and that's your call to action point. Then is your opportunity to start selling. And this is probably what Pete went through and is what Pete specializes in. But what you've got is you've got that lead and you wanting to close that lead. And this is where it changes from focusing on sales call to actions to relationship management and making sure that people understand why you're the best person for them. So this half of this flow chart is the customer focused first step of the messaging bit that we talked through before. The second half is where you start talking about yourself. This is where you show them that you're the best person for them. But from a marketing and content point of view, what you need to start thinking of is automations. Get the robots to do it for you. So looking at how you manage relationships on a CRM system, how you have not just an email newsletter, but email content that adds value. You have workflows that trigger, for example, if you've got somebody to sign up to or fill in a health questionnaire to make sure you're the right person for them, you then have automated triggers for managing that relationship. So it might be that you then send them actually a really good example is they did a personality test here to see, so you can kind of qualify them. Are they the best person? Is it that they need support based on their personality and their responses, or are they somebody that you can send resources to? Because that'll be what they're actually looking for. What you have here is then based on the result of that personality test, they get an automated series of either resources, or they get sent a calendar link to book in a one-to-one or whatever. But basically what you're having here is that you're starting to manage that relationship, nurture that person, and turn them into a sale, turn them into a customer. Then it's really about using them to do the work for you. So you get the feedback, which helps with your reputation and that authority that we mentioned before. So you conduct your surveys, you get your Google reviews, you focus on sharing their content on your social media rather than your own. So if they tag you in a post, share it, and they're doing the work for you. You are monitoring how they talk about you on social media. You're monitoring how other people talk about you on social media and what those people that you're currently working with need and are saying they need, so that you can send them to your referral partners, that kind of thing. But what essentially you find is that these people go from being a customer to being somebody that talks about your brand, that tags you in their LinkedIn post to say thank you, because you have nurtured them through your content. So what you've done is you've attracted them, you've converted them and added value, you've sold to them, and you've given them exactly what they need and want based on the framework we went through before. And you've really managed that relationship. You've made a friend. That's where they do the legwork for you. And something I say a little bit further in is that people trust what other people say about your brand more than they trust what you say. It's like going out to a restaurant for dinner for the first time. You check reviews to make sure it's a decent restaurant, because you trust what people say rather than you trust what the marketing of that company says. So what you want to do is prime people so that they become an invested part of your lead generation process, and they actually bring the strangers to you rather than you having to seek them. The main thing to think about here is linking it back to that content pyramid. What different types of content have you got here that turn them into the visitor because of the fact that it's hero content and it resonates with what they're talking about, what they need. From there, it's about relationship management, objection handling, and the kind of more sales processy types of things. But one thing I would say is if you can get the robots to do a lot of that admin side of things for you, you can spend a lot more time nurturing and attracting in a creative way. Because you know that what the robots are doing, you've set that up before so that it hits the nail on the head from a customer lead generation point of view. I understand that this is a slightly more complicated way of looking at it, but I can guarantee you that if you, instead of focusing on this bit, the attraction, the social media posts, if you start thinking about the extra levels of your content from a lead generation point of view and adding value, you will get more leads, which is what marketing is designed to do. But if you need to, as I said before with the content pyramid, if it's something you need to kind of go through with your own services in place, in mind, just drop me a message and we can chat through it. Because it is a slightly more complex way of looking at it. And if you've not looked at it this way before, it can be a bit overwhelming. But follow the arrows and it'll get people talking about your business instead of you having to. So that's step 3. Any questions on that section?
No, again, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Laura. Great.
Mm-hmm. So step 4 is where you can get creative. So this is where actually marketing for me goes from being that mundane management to actually how can I creatively stand out from the crowd and boost my profile and attract, if you go back to that first column of the lead generation, attract people in a way that makes me way ahead of the game compared to my competitors. And actually I think this is the fun bit because it doesn't become that kind of monotonous task of managing social media. There's other things out there, so what can I tap into? So what I have here is just a list of a few different types of content. So you've got ebooks, you've got blogs, there's so many different things you can do that add value in a different way than social media can. If, for example, there's 1,000,001 statistics that say that if you include video content in your social media marketing, people engage with it more. So it's thinking, right, how can I do this, present this in a different way? It's really good in industries which people may assume don't get much like online engagement. Sorry to stereotype, but professional services whose customers are other businesses may think that actually it's really hard for content marketing to even work because their audience aren't there engaging with them. But actually some of the best platforms, profiles on things like Instagram are in that professional service sector because what they've done is reposition themselves with the content that they produce, making it much more engaging, giving their customers actually what they need. So bringing it right back to that very first section. So based on the content pyramid and the lead generation flow, what you need to think about is what do your audience need and want? Based on their problems, how can you add value to their experience before they become a customer? So it might be, going back to the lead generation flow, that you find that video content, social media, maybe a podcast, and say an infographic, that's what you focus your time on for attracting customers. What you then have is, right, from that customers to the conversion, so from attracting them to converting them to a lead, how am I adding value to their experience? So what is the hero piece here? So it might be that you release a guide. You have a guide that you put out once a quarter that is tailored to a really key talking point within your industry or among your customers. So that guide is your hero piece. And what you find is that that guide is what you send people, you get people to sign up to access based on the ebooks you've written, the infographics that you've put out, the social media and the podcasts that you've used to get them there in the first place. So it's about getting people there, then converting them by actually adding value to their experience. So what I'm kind of getting to here is by using the content pyramid structure and thinking about the different types of content that are available, it's really kind of, it actually makes it quite simple and gives you a bit more brain space to think, well, actually, I have got more time to write a guest blog for somebody, or I've got more time to be on a webinar with Mike, or I can actually write this guide and get it out there in time for Christmas, for example. Then what you have is that your email marketing, for example, becomes about maintaining relationships and generating new leads. You have those case studies which add to your authority and reputation. And the rest of it kind of comes naturally because you then have the actual customers sharing that, doing the legwork when it comes to reviews and testimonials. So when you're thinking about content marketing and content in general, have a think right back to the beginning, think about who your audience are and what they need. Then think about the content pyramid. So what for each section, for each 4 sections, what type of content fits in well there for you based on how much time, the resources levels you need to put into it. And then think about, right, I've got that, how am I then making it a lead and how am I adding value? So you add value by the different types of content. And then once you've got that, you can get much more creative with it and it doesn't become as mundane because you're more invested, and so are your audience because they see the value in what you're doing. So it makes it much more circular of an experience. So that's where that comes in. The final step is the brand advocate thing that we've been through already. So people trust other people more than they trust you. So it's about how you can create brand advocates, people sharing your content and talking about you more because you've resonated with them and added value to their experience. So that is the kind of key 5 steps of how to take it from managing content to generating leads. So if there are any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Laurie. I have a question actually about the different, I guess, avenues of getting your content out there.
Yeah.
Kind of 2 parts there, really. Do you think that firstly, social media is the obvious one for a lot of people because whilst it's not the quickest necessarily, because there's quite a lot of time involved, it's probably fairly simple and easy to put content out there, to go onto Facebook, Twitter, whatever, to type a post is a relatively easy thing to do. Whereas maybe other forms have traditionally been a little bit more difficult. And I'll use an example of maybe video and podcasting as 2 examples of that. But actually, especially over the last 6 months or so, video, but also podcasting now is a relatively easy thing for anyone to do. Therefore, maybe the shift might come where, okay, social media might be the output for those things, but actually people will concentrate on podcasting video. Do you think there might maybe a shift and a change?
I think there already is a shift happening. But I think that the important thing to think about is that social media, yes, it's quick and easy, but because of the fact that it's so quick and easy, people get into the habit of putting out those kind of base layer and serial value content. And if you actually want to have value with your audience and create that community, you are going to need to do more than just social media. So podcasting and video is a really good example of something you could use as your hero piece, or at least your social piece. You talk about it on social media. The difficulty with podcasting is that you can see how many people view and listen to your podcast, but you don't generally get so much engagement from it until you then post a link on social media and people can talk about it with you then, or until you have a conversation with somebody who says, that was a really great podcast, I really enjoyed that. So the thing is, podcasts and video take longer to do, but you can get creative. Same as writing a blog or putting an event together, you can get more creative in that. And the fact that it takes longer to do is actually probably a better thing because you're more focused then on the quality of it. Whereas with social media, you're not as much, generally, because it's quick, it's simple, it's a really quick and easy way to engage with people. So I think it's what it needs to be and what it is very much is, and I think more and more people are focusing on, is that you need to make sure that even if you're using social media, it ties in with other forms of content to add that value, because that's the difference between managing it and generating leads from it. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely does. And I guess the value of podcasting and videos is the potential for repurposing the content as well and using it for. So you might do an hour-long video with someone, say like this, but a lot of platforms, I'll use LinkedIn as an example, the most you can put on is 10 minutes at once. Well, you could use that. So you could essentially use that 6 times potentially. So okay, it takes a little bit longer to create that content. There's a lot more content there to use, and you can kind of, break it down and use it for different purposes as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why platforms like Instagram are going the right way with this, because there are so many things you can do on Instagram now, and the level of length in content. So you've got posts, you've got stories, which only last 24 hours, so it's very live and quick. You've got reels, which are still very quick. It's basically TikTok, but it's much more about kind of that engaging. And then you've got IGTV, which is a long video. And that's where you can add that value. So actually using Instagram as an example in itself, because of how they've added to the different types of things you can upload to the channel, the platform, actually you can do a lot of that content pyramid within the platform. Whereas, like you say, like LinkedIn and Facebook and even Twitter's probably the worst for it, because it is so quick, it is very much about that kind of quick engagement, easy reaction. Whereas Instagram, your website, an event, event's not content, but the type of marketing, it takes longer. So it could be your hero piece. But yeah, it is evolving, I would say, the world of content marketing. Just constantly remind yourself of, right, what's my high value item here? What's the bit that I'm going to tell people to buy from me? Where does that sit? And layer it down from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura.
No problem.
So as I first said, thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really, really good. And if anyone wants to get hold of you, where's kind of best places to do so?
We're all connected in Workplace anyway. I would say my email is probably the best place at the minute, because I see it more often than I do LinkedIn messages, which is just info@chromamarketing.co.uk. Drop me an email or connect with me in Workplace and we can have a chat.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. And just finally from me, so as everyone knows, we do this on a weekly basis. Laura did mention Pete earlier on in the presentation, and Pete's doing the second one of his next week, which is all about how to have a really good first prospect meeting. And obviously that has evolved and changed a lot over the last 6 months or so. So there's I'm sure he'll cover both face-to-face and using platforms like Zoom and other video technologies. So I think that'll be a really useful event next week for everyone. So again, Laura, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And if anyone does have any questions about it, please contact either of us, and I'm sure we'll be able to help.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.